Hi, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today I want to talk about my rules for job interviews. Okay, so today I want to talk a little bit about the delicate art of job interviews. Now to be honest with you, it's been quite a few years since I've been to a job interview, but I used to do them all the time. So I started off as and now I do like sales meetings. So it's kind of like a job interview. Each time you're meeting with a new client and you're just sort of trying to impress them and trying to get the project and everything like that. Right? So, but back in the early days when I first came to the UK and I got my first IT job, I mean, I used to get really nervous at job interviews. It was almost like you're sitting an exam, like an oral exam, and you just sit there like, yes, no, yes, yes, that's a good question. And then over the years, especially when I became a contractor, when I would go to tons of job interviews. In fact, I really started to like doing the job interviews. I started to it became that one bit where it's this is the show. I'm going to put on the Eric Rooley show for a few minutes and go to different places. So whenever I was looking for a job, that was one of the bright spots. And it is a big difference between if you're looking for a job and you're desperate to get it, as opposed to when you're looking for a job and you've got loads of interviews set up, or if you're already in a job and you go into something else, then it's kind of fun because you're going into some place and you're trying to really do that. And I think that doing the job interview is a skill like any others, and most people don't treat it that way. So if you go into a job interview, there's certain things you have to say, there's certain ways you have to dress, there's certain characteristics that you have to show. And over the years I really found this. It got to the point where every time I'd go to a job interview, or as for a contract or whatever, I know that I would come away with an offer. And I know it sounds like a boast, and it is a boast, but I started getting so good at it that it was almost like I wanted to keep looking for jobs, or I would consider leaving the job that I get just because I like that looking for a job, so much, right? And that's when you're a contractor and you have this nest egg, growing and everything like that. But so there's several books I've read, over the course of my life. One of them is this one. It's Great Answers to Tough Interview Questions, which a lot of people saw me reading this and they were like, oh God, why would you read that book? And it was actually pretty good, right? People say, surely they'll know that you're using these set answers, and you know what? Nobody ever did, right? So anyway, I want to go with, just tell you, and this isn't going to apply to all of you. Some of you guys are, you have your own apps, you're not looking for a job. But some of you guys are very young, you might be looking for a job. I'm just going to tell you some of my rules when it came to looking for a job, just so you maybe it'll help you out, maybe not. Right, so I've got three major rules that I think of when I go out looking for a job. And the first one, my first rule is to always use a scattergun approach, right? I've known too many people who will send off a CV to one company and then they'll wait to hear back. They'll wait days and weeks and months, and they'll say, how's that job search going? I'm just waiting to hear back. And my whole thing has always been to take the scattergun approach, right? I don't think there's one job for you. I think there's a few different jobs that you could do. And what you should do is send something, just apply to everything that's in the area. If it's a listed job, apply to that. If it's something else, if it's a job at a company, you might not even know if they have a job. Send your CV in anyway. Go on LinkedIn and find out who the hiring manager is or the head of the company, whatever. Send them your CV. They'll probably ignore it. Probably 90% chance they'll ignore it, but maybe not. And it's just the price of a stamp or an email, so it's no cost, just a bit of time, and you could go out there and do that. And so what I always consider is it's almost like your return on investment for in-app purchases. It's like a 2% return. So you have this thing, if you have a 2% return on CVs you sent out, then that means you have to send out 100 to get 2 interviews, right? So that's my big thing there. I don't just, when I'm looking for a job, I don't just look for, I'm going to try there. If I don't hear back, I'm going to try there. And then if I don't hear back, no, I'm asynchronous. Everything comes out and you wait for the callbacks, right? And also don't disqualify yourself from the job. And I've known a lot of people who do this too. Like they'll say, well, this job's for C# and I've never done C#, or I've only done C# like in university and I've never done it, professionally or whatever, right? That doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. They might not be able to find any C# people anywhere. And it's not you are not. If you want to be a recruitment consultant or a hiring manager, then yeah, you start assuming the role of it. But if you're looking for a job, it's not your job to start disqualifying yourself, right? And I know that sounds like you're wasting a lot of people's time. But I don't really think it is. You know, there are jobs out there. There are so many jobs out there that that are looking for people, and it's not your job to say whether or not you're qualified. That's their job, right? So that's my first rule, is to do the scattergun approach, right? My second rule is to just be prepared as much as you can. Like I said, I read this book here, right? I always think, whenever I go for a job, and people will say you should read the website, go through, learn everything you can about the company. I've never done that, right? To be honest with you, sometimes I find out about the company like as I go, oh, I got an interview in an hour. Well, what does this company do? And you just look it up again. Okay, yeah, go in there, just read the About Us page, and you go in. But kind of know like who you're meeting with. If you have a recruitment consultant, like a recruiter, especially in the UK, the recruiters are just, they're like leeches, right? They just, they go out there, they're bringing in jobs. I mean, I don't really trust recruiters, but I use them all the time, right? In fact, I once had a recruiter, just a little horror story, that when I was in this job that I hated, this permanent job, I was setting up my CVs to places. He calls me up and says, who's your manager? And I most of the time I wouldn't tell him, but he says, I need to know your manager, otherwise I can't put you through. So I told him the name of my manager. I was out in the hallway, sneaking the call, and then I went back into the office, and then the phone rings, the switchboard, which is just within earshot, and it's that guy calling my manager to say, I hear you have a job for web developer opening, right? It was really, really sleazy practices. They'll do, it's called fishing for leads, right? They say they have a job, but they don't, and they're just fishing for leads. So recruiters are using you all the time, but you need to use them too. So, they need to, if they're going to set you up with an interview someplace, you're going to say, hey, who am I meeting with? All this kind of stuff, what's their dress code like, all that stuff. So if you're, and as a general rule, if you are meeting with a business owner or like a senior manager who's not a developer, the way you treat the interview is going to be different than if you do with a developer. So a lot of times they'll give you their lead developer and they'll ask you a bunch of technical questions, and the lead developer doesn't really, it's almost like they don't really want you to get the job. But what they want to do is they have like two goals there. One is to filter out the candidates, and the other one is to show how knowledgeable they are to their boss. So they have to say, like, they'll ask you the really tough questions that nobody cares about. They're just like, so how many clustered index are there on the SQL table? Right? And it's just, and you're just sitting there, it's like an exam, and you're just like, whatever. But if you go in there with the business owner, the business owner wants to give the business owner has a need, and they want to give that job to somebody, and they're just hoping that you're just like not going to screw up the interview. They've almost, when they read your CV, they've kind of made a decision about you already. They may have made a decision about you and 5 or 10 other people, but they're just hoping that you go in there and show that you do that, right? So, and then also have your tough interview questions, like the tough interview questions, ready. And it's going to be really hard because sometimes some will just hit you, like you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But they'll ask stuff like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? They'll say stuff like, can you tell us one reason why we would not hire you, right? And this book, it was so cheesy. He was like, well, actually, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, or actually, sometimes I'm very passionate about what I do, and we can get into heated discussions because we both have the same goal of making the best product and stuff like that. And it's just really, it's this, you don't tell them something bad like I got caught stealing at my last company or whatever, right? And also, if they ask you, why did you leave your last place? You never say anything negative. Always, it's, you don't say, oh, my last boss was a jerk and he fired me and he treated me unfairly, right? Because the first thing they think, and I know this because when I'm interviewing, I think this, is that's what you're going to be saying about them. That's what you'd be saying about me if I was interviewing you, right? So it's better to say, I always give the same answer. It's like I thought I'd look for some new challenges. That was a great work opportunity and was a great place, great people. But I just needed more challenges, and I thought something like this would suit me better, right? Just like an answer like that. Now, if you were fired from the last place, you could say, that there was a change in direction at the last company, which I completely agree with. Things were not going great, but it gives me an opportunity to find new challenges, which this is fantastic, right? Always be up and preppy and everything like that. And my third big rule, and this one is kind of key, is always go for the win, right? Don't ever abandon an interview halfway through. And what I mean by that is, I've had an argument with fellow contractors about this before. I was talking about, if you go into an interview and within the first 5 minutes you decide you don't want this job, right? It's just terrible, terrible location. The people are rude, they're nasty. You just think the place smells kind of funny or whatever. You think, I can't see myself making this commute every day, whatever. My whole thing is I will still go for the offer, right? And where my contractor friends will say, no, this is, I'll tell them to, I'll just tell them then, this isn't going to work out. And then, because why waste everyone's time, right? And my whole thing is, they're being paid for their time and you're not being paid for your time, so you might as well go with, once you decide you don't want the job, it becomes dress rehearsal, right? That's my whole thing, right? So you go through it and everything and go for the win and show enthusiasm about the job, right? So if you go in there and they say, it could be the most boring job in the world. You say, actually, we mass produce cheese graters, right? And we need you to write the inventory system that manages cheese graters for all these companies around the world, right? And you don't just say, oh, you go, oh, that's awesome, that's great, that's great. You can even, if you're thinking on your feet, you can say something like that. Now, most of the time, the software that I produce, you can't see the immediate effects of it. So something like this, where you actually have concrete things going out to customers, no, that's really exciting, right? Even though, at this point, you're like, it's a cheese grater machine, whatever. And you also, talk about the office or whatever. It's like, this is a really nice place or whatever, or, say, when I was looking through the different jobs that were listed, and I saw that, this one that you guys had, and I thought, that sounds really exciting, and then I just had to come and talk to you. Because you think about it, if you're going to hire somebody, you don't want to hire somebody who's just really technically smart, but just doesn't look like the kind of person you'd want to work with, right? It's sort of like yeah, okay, yeah, all right, so what are the hours around here, huh? Do I get any holiday? Yeah, I guess I could do that. I guess so. So basically, yeah, you're using Salesforce? Yeah. Right? You don't want to hire that guy. You want to hire the person who looks like he's ready to join the team, right? And part of it is, and this sounds very two-faced, and you guys think I'm two-faced or whatever, but when you walk in that door, your job is to go away with the offer, right? That's the whole thing, right? So part of it is playing a part. I mean, you don't lie about your skills, right? If they say, but also you don't hold back on your skills. So let's say you've looked at Phaser.io development or something. Like you've done the demo project, you've done like a little bit with Cordova or something like that, but you've never produced anything, put it on the market, or you've never actually done anything professionally, right? And they say, what can you tell me about Phaser.io, right? You don't say, I've never, I don't know anything about it, right? Because in your mind you're thinking, they're asking if I'm qualified, and that's not what they were asking. What they're asking is, well, what do you know about it? And if you say, look, to be honest with you, I haven't used it professionally, but I have looked into it, and it's really exciting technology. This is the kind of thing that, God, I would love to work with that. I mean, is that the kind of stuff you do here, right? That is a better answer than just saying, I've never worked on it. Or even the worst answer is, I wanted to use that at my last job, but my boss wouldn't let me, right? So, that's not what they're asking. I've asked that question all the time. When I'm interviewing somebody, I always throw in a question there of some newer technology that most likely they haven't worked with to see what kind of answer they get. So I'll say and when Silverlight was new, I would say, what can you tell me about Silverlight? And they'll say, I wanted to use it at my last job, but my boss wouldn't let me, right? And it's just like, ooh, bad. That answer just, you said, because that's not what I asked. I said, what do you know about it? When James Bond walks into M's office and they say, what can you tell me about the Mideast oil pipeline? I don't know. Well, it runs whatever, that's what I'm asking, right? So, and a lot of times you get called into senior managers' offices and they'll ask those kind of questions. And this is the way it is. As a software developer, you are the technology specialist at the building, right? And lastly, if you're going with a recruiter especially, you don't have to give them an answer on that day. But you're always enthusiastic. Like I said, if you decided 5 minutes into the interview that you weren't going to do it, then you're like, oh man, I'll get in touch with my recruiter and I'm sure you'll hear from them. And no, are you interviewing a lot of other people? Yeah, we're interviewing 5 others. Oh, fantastic, great. Well, thanks for showing me around, and I really appreciate it. I hope to hear from you soon, right? And then you leave, right? And then the next day or 2 days later, when the recruiter calls you up and said, hey, I got great news for you. They offered you the job, and you're like, yeah, you know what, I don't really want that. You know, so, and I know it feels like you're wasting everybody's time, but you know, they're being paid for their time, and as a job seeker, you are not, right? But one thing you may have done is raise the standards, so when they do look for somebody else, you know, they know the right person to look for. This may all sound a bit two-faced, and I was almost kind of like, I don't know if I should talk about this, but when I think interviewing for jobs is a skill like any others. I used to be very terrible at it, then I got very good at it, you know, and when you go in there, you're a salesman. And this is one of the things as a software developer, because you're not like a mere mortal who just has to interview well, right? You have to know technical skills too. You can't just go in there for a SQL Server job and not know anything about SQL Server. You have to know the ins and outs, because you're going to get asked technical questions, and you don't want to misrepresent yourself too. But at the same time, it's not your job to disqualify yourself from that job, right? Because you don't know what the rest of the field looks like. Let's say if I'm hiring a Cordova developer or an Ionic developer, right? And I interview 20 people, right? And nobody has any experience, right? They say they do, but when I ask them a few questions, they don't. And then I ask you a few questions, and you have more experience than them, but you don't think you do, so you think you just downplay it, right? That doesn't help anybody, right? If you say, hey, or even if you don't have the experience, you say, hey, you know what, to be honest with you, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to use that, but I'm very excited about this technology, then that sounds better to me than somebody who says, yeah, I used it a little bit, right? So you never know. It's those soft skills. It's the same within doing the company when you meet with clients. It's those soft skills that I have to learn and concentrate on. And every time I go meet with a client, it's live fire exercise. But it's also, you know, kind of a dress rehearsal, because I think things that I said here didn't work quite well. I'll try to say something else next time, all that kind of stuff, you know, my level of preparedness, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I hope that's been helpful for those of you who are searching for jobs. I know, it's really long again today. But anyway, that's it for today. I will talk to you guys on Monday.